Good morning. It's a rowdy group this morning. Good morning and welcome. Good morning. Look at David. Quiet. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. My name is Rihanna Wiggins, she, her, and I serve on both the worship team and starting today on the religious education team. Yay! It's starting today for those of us who are involved. And this is one of the things I love about this congregation, is how we gather. Closer to the mic? Oh, gosh. I couldn't tell what I was getting signaled for. I'm like, it's not time to light the chalice. I lit the candle. Okay. What I would like to see is a show of hands of who attended last week's phenomenal retreat. Raise them real high. Wow. And how many of you, keep those hands up, have been to a retreat before? Lovely. It looks like more than half. Last weekend was an incredibly rich time for, I think, about 150 congregants. So in 2 years, we'll retreat again. Put it on your calendar. And I'd like to welcome those joining us online. If you are a visitor to us online, there's a link in the description. We'd love for you to fill out that form and connect with us. To give you some idea of what we're all about, let me tell you about our mission. We say that here we connect bravely, deepen spiritually, embody justice, and always love. We mean that this community is inviting you into our shared time together today, but it's also inviting you into a way of life and a way of being in the world that just might transform you. One of our values is celebrating our intergenerational community, which means our services might be a little more squirmy, or someone might make noises that we're not expecting, and at a time we don't expect it. But that could be a small child, or it could be someone with a cough. Being together means making space for these things without any judgment. And it's okay if you need to move elsewhere to see or hear better. This chalice is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition. It is a cup of life, sustenance to quench our spirit's thirst, a cup of celebration and resolve, a flame of hope, a light to warm our souls and to guide us home. As the chalice is lit, may I invite you to turn to someone next to you and greet them with a good morning.
Well, a hearty good morning unto you all. My name is Dr. Emily Coriath, and I have the great pleasure of serving as the music director here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. We will begin in song together. Our first hymn is number 6 in the gray hymnal, Just As Long As I Have Breath. And if you're willing to rise in body or in spirit, we'll sing together.
With It's good to be together. I feel, even though I saw so many of you last week, even though I was in the pulpit the week before that, there is still something about this Sunday which feels like we are all going back to school again. I know that's true especially for students and teachers in the area who either just started or are this week. But I don't want to let go entirely of that feeling of retreat. And at the service last weekend, at the whole of the weekend, I saw 150 of us making connections and finding relationship and welcoming each other into being known more deeply. On retreat, whether it's that one or any retreat you take, you go looking, you go to find something that exists in the ordinary world, but maybe we've forgotten how to find it, how to see it here. And so in the Sunday morning service 7 days ago, Rachel and Dr. Emily and I challenged you with the question, what of that experience do you want to bring back down the mountain again? What do you want to bring back into ordinary life? And the question is still alive. Connection is a piece of that, a piece of what to bring back. We often think of loneliness only in terms of the gap between the connection that you want to have with others and the connection that you do have with others, and that's real. But there's also a kind of loneliness where our separation isn't just from others, but also from ourselves, from source, from a whole or an authentic self and to something beyond self. My friend, my colleague, the Reverend Erica Hewitt, calls this cosmic loneliness. And she suggests this. She says, what if the ache, that feeling of being estranged, of wanting to make the connection to self, to soul, to more, to the divine, what if the ache of cosmic loneliness is really the compass that calls us, that nudges us, that orients us toward the source of life, so that we do not and simply cannot attempt to live without connecting and reconnecting to that source, to that experience. She writes, I believe that my restless longing of the spirit is like a homing pigeon that's been trundled over mountains and meadows to a faraway place before being released. I can't do this alone. I hear myself saying inside my heart, where are you? That cosmic loneliness gnawing at me is what stirs my haphazard, my humanly flawed path back home. I hear sometimes from folks looking for ways to answer the question that you get from friends, from family, from colleagues. What is this church that you go to and why do you go there? I expect some of your friends probably say it less suspiciously than that. Some probably say it more suspiciously. But trying to find a way to answer succinctly. It's difficult, I think, in those moments to say to your friend, to your relative, because I am a homing pigeon, and I have been taken far away from who I am and what I'm about, because there is something in me that remembers, that knows, that intuits the way that I am supposed to be in the world is not the way that I am in the world all the time, and I want to get back home to that thing again. Not to be told with rules and instruction and creed what exactly I am supposed to be doing, but I need some sense that my insides and my outsides line up better together. I need to find a place where I don't feel that loneliness of spirit. That's the work that we return to over and over and over again. Will you take a breath with me? Let's do that again, and I invite you to find a comfortable way for your body to be supported, and a deep enough breath, and a long enough breath, and a slow enough breath, as many breaths as you need for that homing pigeon of yourself to catch back up to your heart. The author and poet Wendell Berry offers these words for meditation. He's writing, I think in Tennessee or Kentucky, but I think this is true here too. He says, always in big woods, when you leave familiar ground and step off alone into a new place, there will be, along with the feelings of curiosity and excitement, a little nagging of dread. It is the ancient fear of the unknown, and it is your first bond with the wilderness you're going into. You are undertaking the first experience not of the place, but of yourself in the place. It is an experience of our essential loneliness, for no one can discover the world for anyone else. It's only after we've discovered it for ourselves that it becomes a common ground and a common bond, and we cease to be alone. And the world cannot be discovered by a journey of miles, no matter how long, but only, he writes, by a spiritual journey, a journey of 1 inch, very arduous and humbling and joyful, by which we arrive at the ground at our feet and learn to be at home. Join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation, which in some sense is a spirit of trying to remember who we are and what we're about. A spirit not of receiving instruction from me, but reconnecting with that still small voice inside yourself, which is also beyond yourself. This sense of conscience, perhaps, but also of connection. Like somewhere deep, deep, deep in the center of you, there is a closed door which, when you open it, leads not just to this solitary room of self, but opens outward into a connection with every other person. And deep down at the center of you is everyone else too. Our hope and our prayer this morning, our intention is not to run first from our aloneness. It's not to flee from the scariness or the dread that greets us doing something new, taking some new step, entering some new territory. Our hope and our prayer, our intention this morning is to let ourselves feel everything that we feel. To let ourselves arrive in the moment, in the place. Not in order that we stay forever alone and isolated, but in order to know ourselves better, that we can connect with each other. Be together in silence for a few moments. Amen. Each week when we gather, part of the practice of the stones ritual, part of the practice is placing the stone in token of the joy or the sorrow that's on your heart. Part of making that connection is the kind of courage to show up, to say there is something that is weighing me down. Something that is hard, something that is an obstacle I can't get around. Something that is so joyfully solid, I need to place this to make that visible to myself and others. But the other half of that practice, the other half of the work of connection, is not you showing up to everyone else with your own life. It's showing up to everyone else's life. So on the one hand, it's a private act, it's a personal act to place a stone in symbol of your own private joy, your individual grief, and then it's a community act. What we make is a whole, this visible landscape of our inner lives, unique and united. There are joys and sorrows to share this morning, and I invite you, after each one is read, to respond all together without trying to be in unison, to respond, "We are with you." That is, you're with the joy, the sorrow being shared, the folks who are sharing it. Robin shares that she's thinking of all the students and teachers who went back to school this past week. We are with you. Brandy writes, our child was picked up from the hospital on Thursday, and we're grateful for all the help received from hospital staff. We're with you. And I am delighted to share the news of the engagement of Ada Ball and Fox Martin, two kids who grew up in this church and now are very much no longer kids. We are with you and with their families. For all of the blessings we concern, for all of the joys, for all of the blessings and concerns we carry, for all of the joy and sorrow, we hold this space with love for one another. Amen.
Mountains rough this time of year. They close the highway down, and they don't warn the town. And I've been fighting second gear for 15 miles or so, trying to beat the angry snow. And I know every town worth passing through, but what good does knowing do with no one to show it to? And I've grown tired of traveling alone, tired of traveling alone. I've grown tired of traveling alone. Won't you ride with me? I've grown tired of traveling alone, tired of traveling alone. I've grown tired of traveling alone. Won't you ride with me? Won't you ride? Won't you ride? And I quit talking to myself and listening to the radio a long, long time ago. Damn near strangled by my appetite in Ybor City on a Friday night. Couldn't even stand upright. And I've grown tired of traveling alone, tired of traveling alone. I've grown tired of traveling alone. Won't you ride with me? I've grown tired of traveling alone, tired of traveling alone. I've grown tired of traveling alone. Won't won't you ride with me? I've grown tired of traveling alone, tired of traveling alone. I've grown tired of traveling alone. Won't you ride with me? Won't you ride? Won't you ride?
There is a single loneliest minute of the day. When measured in terms of Google searches for the word loneliest, or lonely rather. Also, this is from a few years ago, so it may not be accurate still. But I'm curious if you have a guess at what the single loneliest minute of the day is. 9:45. All right, I hear 9:45. What else? 6 a.m., that's a rough one sometimes. 3 a.m. Folks online, you may not be hearing that as each number is read out, the response in the room is, oh. The loneliest minute, at least in what I saw, was 3:24 a.m., which is a strong contender, but for that matter, pretty much any minute of the day can be the loneliest minute. A friend told me that they had very slowly, over years, come to recognize the signal inside themselves, the light on the dashboard inside themselves, right? The emotional experience inside themselves, which would distinguish between feeling alone and loneliness. And that here are two different things. Feeling or being alone, he said, might be just fine most days. Space and time for yourself isn't loneliness. Solitude isn't automatically loneliness. Loneliness is the experience of the gap between the meaningful connection you want to have and the meaningful connection you do have. That's where loneliness lives, is that space, which is simple to define, but endless in variety. There are so many ways to be lonely. Some of you know the loneliness of aging, the loneliness of losing the close connections that you once had, the isolation that comes when your body can't show up to other people the same amount of time or energy that it used to. And some of you know the loneliness of parenting when your waking life is divided into work and kids and then keeping up the bare minimum of functioning it takes to do those two things. And there are not hours in the day, it seems, to make connection. And some of you know the loneliness as a young adult moving to a new city, a new state, a new job, a new school. A friend told me last year about the city of Boulder. He said, people in this city are starving for connection. In part because so many of the ways that we make community are commerce. They are pay-to-play relationships. In the yoga studio that you go to, and then you don't when you stop paying for it. That list goes on. And then for that matter, some of you know the claustrophobic loneliness inside a relationship. Or in a home where you can't show up as all of who you are, where the people close to you don't see that or can't see that. The gap between meaningful connections you want to have and the meaningful connections you do have. People began to tell me they felt isolated, invisible, and insignificant. These are the words of former U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy. people began to tell me they felt isolated, invisible, and insignificant. Even when they couldn't put their finger on the word lonely, he writes, time and time again, people of all ages and all socioeconomic backgrounds from every corner of the country would tell me I have to shoulder all life's burdens by myself. Would tell me if I disappear tomorrow, no one will notice. In 2023, he issued an advisory, a Surgeon General advisory, which is not just like a little bit of advice from a doctor. It is an in-depth report titled Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. An advisory is reserved for significant public health challenges that require the nation's immediate awareness and action. Why a public health concern? If already I was getting you down, it now gets worse. Loneliness is associated with a greater risk of cardiovascular disease, plus 29%, of dementia, of stroke, plus 32%, of depression, anxiety, and what medical professionals call premature death from any source, of 26%. This is me quoting from the report. The mortality impact of being socially disconnected is similar to that caused by smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day, and greater than that associated with obesity and physical activity. One wrong conclusion to draw was that you should wait till you have more close relationships before you begin smoking. Because then I don't think that's what the Surgeon General was saying. But there is something that we need to cut that tension because, oh my God, I am not trying to scare you into making friends. I don't think fear-based motivation works like that. The real point here, the point I want to make from the medical data as well as what you already know intuitively, is that our deep need for loving community is not a holdover from childhood fantasy. Our desire to know each other, to know others deeply, to acknowledge our shared experience, this is not like an immature yearning for a utopia that the mature individual ought to overcome, that you should just man up to get through, right? The meeting of people, heart to heart, is deep toward the center of what gives meaning to our lives, what sustains our lives, even though it is easy to forget that, and it is easy to convince yourself otherwise. Maya Angelou says it in poetry. She says, lying, thinking last night how to find my soul a home, where water is not thirsty and bread loaf is not stone, I came up with one thing. And I don't believe I'm wrong, that nobody, but nobody can make it out here alone. And what she says in poetry, Dr. Murty says in the data, social connection, he writes, in the Surgeon General's advisory, is a fundamental human need, as essential to survival as food and water and shelter. Not a human want. Listen to the word. I'm quoting him here. I'm not offering hyperbole. This is not, says the Surgeon General, a human nice to have when time allows for it, but a need as essential to survival as food and water and shelter. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I am so curious, do you believe that? Do you believe it? If you do, oh yeah, I resist that. So, like, water, shelter? I know you're a doctor, but still, is this true? If you do believe it, what will you do with that knowing? And if you don't, if you resist this, let me offer not a directive, but an invitation to an experiment. To spend 9 months, to spend this coming school year acting as if that statement was true, responding to that statement as if it was true, and then watching to see what the result is And we can all check back in June and kind of see how this went. I want to encourage action. I want to encourage the experiment, because knowing this does not actually help anything. You probably knew the stuff that I'm sharing already, maybe not the specific mortality percentage increase, but you know that you need to be connected. The knowing doesn't help. What's the acting? What's the action? I'm not offering this in order to say that what we have in this room is the answer and solution to all of your problems. The congregation provides social infrastructure, and other places in public life do also. This is not the only place to be able to make those sorts of connections. But also, none of those places, including this one, automatically make the connections. It provides the infrastructure, but then we build relationship on top of the infrastructure. It's just as possible to feel isolated and disconnected in a room full of happy people as it is to feel isolated and disconnected by yourself. So the suggestion I have is that it takes 3 ingredients, maybe 4, depending how you number them. It takes space and time, and it takes courage to be vulnerable. Space and time. At the retreat last week on Friday night, after folks had made the drive up the mountain, after they had figured out where the dining hall was and how dinner was going to work, after they had realized that their children were not going to get to sleep at a reasonable hour, after all of these things, we gathered for a little service first to start, to sing together, to have a few words, to set intention. And then in small groups of 4 or 6 or 8, inside of a container for connection. And this, I think, is the first ingredient. What's the container that makes the connection possible? What are the boundaries that make the connection possible? When we met in that small group, there was a format. It wasn't just, here are 6 people sitting together, good luck, be in relationship. There was a format. First, to check in. What are the joys and the sorrows you're bringing with you into this moment? And then, here are just a few big open-ended questions for honest conversation. And we did that inside of a container. What I mean by that is, first, that the thing that we're doing in that moment isn't transactional. I check in deeply and honestly and authentically with my therapist, but I am paying to do that with them, and they are not doing that with me. It's not a reciprocal relationship, right? So we're in a container that's not transactional. We're in a container that's not like a bar. There's no intoxicants. There's no trying to hook up at the end of the night, right? That changes the nature of the relationship when that's not at play. The container is the covenant of right relationship we make with each other, the promises about how we're going to be in relationship together, and the intention to repair that relationship if harm is done between 2 people. So there's a container. And then what we fill that with is so simple: joys and sorrows and a few big open-ended questions. This is not the only place to do that sort of work. But there are opportunities here. The Soul Matter groups that form later this fall are basically small groups of 6 to 8 people who meet to check in and talk about a few big questions. There are so many communities that meet here each month. We tell newcomers coming into the congregation that some of the most important work early on is to find your people, to find your small community within the big community. Because it's not automatically the case that every single person in this room is going to be a dear, close friend. In fact, that is definitely not going to happen. And that's okay. What we owe each other is not instant and always unconditional, deep personal relationships. What we owe each other in general is respect and decency. And then within the big community, where are the people who you can go deeper with, who can meet you when you show up to them? 2 years ago, a dear, dear friend of mine in a different time zone on the West Coast 2 years ago. This guy who I had grown up with from before I even remember meeting him. We never didn't know each other. Someone who was like a brother to me as a kid and who I hadn't really talked to in a decade for a conversation that was more than, how are your folks doing? Fine. He reached out of the blue and set up a regular monthly phone call. First Monday of each month, 9 a.m. Mountain Time. We talk with no agenda, no plan, no nothing. It's just space. And I am so grateful to him for this. And what I wanted, and maybe what some part of me expected, was that in that first conversation with him, we would immediately pick up with the same level of intimacy and connection and trust and openness that we had at age 15. And we did not. Because that's not how people work. Most of it, me anyways. The fact is, it took time to relearn each other, to re-trust each other, to take the risk of opening up and then have that met and answered with listening and care and attention. It took time. It took time. And that's the second piece. Not just the container of space, but repeated time. What I wanted from that call is in fact the same thing that I want from every new experience I've ever had, which is to master it wholly and completely the first time I ever do it. I am still waiting on that one. It takes time. It takes time. That's part of how nervous systems work too. They need to be together. You make relationships in that container, and also by playing together, working together, eating together, making music together, crying and laughing together. One and done doesn't work, which is why I would like to pitch you on the perfect opportunity, the absolute perfect opportunity to make a connection is a potluck where you sing a little and then clean up together afterwards. Because you've got working together, playing together, music together. Maybe you got the crying and the laughing in the conversation, and then dishes. It sounds like I am telling you to spend more time washing dishes together. And I am looking for more people to wash dishes here. But I am encouraging you to wash dishes in a broader sense, which is also to wash dishes at home with someone else. Because that time together makes the opportunity for two people, or three or four, to be in that space over and over. This is the beautiful thing about dishes. They get dirty again. This really sounds like I'm trying to sell you on this as an opportunity. What I mean instead is that it takes time and repetition. It takes an investment of time and repetition. It took my friend saying, not let's just chat with each other, but let's set up a monthly phone call on the first Monday of each month at 9 a.m. with a recurring calendar invite on the calendar that does not have an end time. And we show up again and again and again. That's what I mean. And then in that place, when there's a space for it, when there's the time for it to happen over and over, the last, and I actually think maybe the most difficult part of it, is showing up with the courage to be vulnerable to other people. The honest check-in that I want to give, that I sometimes do give, when people ask a question like, how is it with you, is that life is beautiful and tragic and complicated, and I'm a mess, and things are going really well, and I have so many issues. How are you? That gets most of it. And I suspect that in your life, at some point along the way, maybe as a small child, giving that sort of an answer, not those words, but that sort of an honest, real, complicated answer, maybe as a small child giving that to your parents, maybe as a teenager giving that to a friend or a partner, maybe as an adult giving it anywhere along the way. You have said something like that to a person who you wanted to see you and hold you in all of that, and it has landed like a thud. The response has, you have said, I am beautiful and complicated and a mess, and I have issues, and what are yours? And they have said, well, I think we finished the dishes. And if that's been your experience, I understand there is a risk in opening yourself up with that kind of vulnerability again to someone who, again, might not be able to receive it. Someone who might hear you into speech without responding by fixing or saving or setting you straight, without responding with theories and generalities and advice that you are not asking for, but instead to hear it and hold it and see you for who you actually are and how you actually are. It's hard to find the places to do that and the people to do it with and to pick yourself up and have the courage again to do it. This is in part why I think the container and the repeated time matters. It's not just there's a container for everyone else, there's a container for you to build trust with everyone else, to let your shy soul show up. It takes courage, too, to say, all right, there is a person who met me sharing myself with nothing or with the solution to all of my problems that won't even slightly begin to work because they don't have the first clue. So, you're all thinking, I'm thinking of specific moments of that. You've had that, though, and it takes courage then to risk it again. And that is the work. That's part of why we talk about finding your people, finding your small community within the big community. Who are the ones who you can say all of that to, and they will hold it and hear it. To feel less lonely in your stress, two things help, writes the Stanford psychologist Kelly McGonigal. The first is to increase your awareness of others' suffering, and the second is to be more open about your own. To feel less lonely, that's true, and I think it's answered on the other side. In the work we do in the Stones ritual each week, it is to increase your awareness of others' suffering, but also of their joy and delight, of wonder and possibility, and to be more open about yours too. That is to tell the whole story of what it is to be a person among people. A friend told me that they had only and very slowly come to recognize the signal inside themselves, the light on the dashboard of their heart, which distinguishes between feeling alone and loneliness. The signal that something needs to happen, that there is a gap between the sort of real connection that you want to have and what you do. And then to respond to it by making the time inside of the space of a reasonably boundaried container where you can risk the courage to be vulnerable and make those connections. Which is to say, risk the courage to be a regular person and meet other people as regular people too. And then to pick yourself up over and over, again and again, and to keep risking that. That's the experiment I invite you into for the next 9 months. 9 months from now, I will not remember that I invited you into this experiment. But if you remember, genuinely, tell me how it went. I am so curious to see how it goes. Friends, let's close in song. Will you rise in body or in spirit?
Sharing our joy together, bearing our grief.
feel the need to coo like a homing pigeon, but I don't know. Come on, pigeons. Oh. Our congregation is entirely self-supported by our own donations. Money doesn't come to us from grants or from the denomination. Instead, we keep our lights on and pay our staff because all of us contribute as we are able. We make our pledges of support not with equal gifts, but with equal generosity. Most weeks, we split our plate with nonprofits in the area, making the world a better place. And this month, the collection stays in-house to support the work of our congregation. As the baskets come around or you scan the QR code, I invite you to give as generously as you are able. May our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community and the wider world. Before we close today, I have a few invitations. Today at 12:15 in the back of this room is the LGBTQIA+ Connection Group. And then today from 5 to 7, our middle school and high school youth groups kick off. Parents and caregivers of the youth all meet at the same time to connect with each other, and dinner is provided. Will you rise and body your spirit as we close in song?
I have one more announcement before we finish, which is, no, stay standing, it's very brief. It would be a tremendous help if you have the capacity to help us gather the hymnals in the vicinity of that closet when we're finished. And if you happen to find one on the inside cover that says Emily Jaworski, I have a special treat for you, which is a gleaming smile. We have a brand new benediction, so I've asked Austin to play it once through before we sing it together. We'll sing it twice through. Here we go. As you leave this space, know that you belong. our service continues. Go in peace.